Welcome, welcome, everybody. Greg Peterson coming to you from the Urban Farm in a quite cool Phoenix, Arizona. I think we had our coolest February on record here in Phoenix, and that's good for killing the bugs, which I'm really happy about. Tonight we are in for our monthly seed chat, and we have a special guest. Belle Starr is on the line with us as well. Hello, Belle.
I'm special.
Hi,
my dear friend.
Woo-hoo.
Hello, hello.
And plus we have Bill McDorman, and they are both fresh out of the Mountain West Seed Summit. From what I hear, it was a pretty epic event. So I think we're just going to jump in and let you guys go, and I'm going to probably just stay out of the way.
Oh, I don't know about that, Greg. That's kind of hard for you.
Well,
that's true.
And I just want to invite everybody, if you have questions, to enter your questions on your screen, and we'll try to get to those also.
Yes.
Well, I think we should start by taking a nice deep breath.
Oh, yes.
And exhaling. It was very, very epic, Greg. I was just reading the surveys, and we had about 210 people. It was Friday, this past Friday and Saturday. Friday night, we got a horrific snowstorm.
Wow.
In Santa Fe, and we held it at the Institute of American Indian Arts, which is in Santa Fe. Did I say Santa Fe? Oh, sorry. I thought I said Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Still in recovery mode here. We held it at the Institute of American Indian Arts, which is about 20 minutes out of Santa Fe. And by the time we left Friday night, we were like in a blizzard. So we lost some folks on Saturday, but turned out the sun came out. It was beautiful. It was brilliant. The snow kind of washed everything clean. The air was sparkling. And so we had about 210-ish people, and we had a beautiful Thursday field trip with 60 people.
Wow.
And, anybody who's probably listening right now has been to conferences. We've all been to conferences. Many of us have been to seed conferences. I think what made this so different is the nature of the human beings that came together to discuss the different topics about seeds. And it was emotional. It was contentious. It was fiery. It was people. As I said, I was reading the surveys, and there were so many tears. Now, I personally went through many, many healings and epiphanies and tears. I mean, when you think about seeds, you probably don't think, oh, people are crying. Well, and maybe you do. I mean, if you're plugged in, you certainly know that there's a lot to cry about.
It's crying in a positive sense.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. All right.
Crying in a positive sense, and in a sense of release, and some sadness too by some of the things that are definitely happening around the globe that seem to be out of our control, but also with the people in attendance, there are many who are working on the quote issues on many different levels, including on policy. We had Andrew Kimbrell with us from the Center for Food Safety. He's the executive director, and he's in Washington D.C. and he's been in the trenches for 35 years, winning lawsuits against certain unnamed companies who have merged recently to make their bad name go away, to restore the rights of those seeds to the people that they belong to. It's not just germplasm or genetics, and I think that was maybe the single most important thing that came out of the event is the spiritual nature of this work.
Interesting. Say more about that.
I'll let Bill take that because
let's paint kind of a big picture. So the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance, is a non-profit seed conservation organization, and it's emerging in a unique way. It was never set up to, and it is not going to try to save seeds itself as an organization. It's not going to have a big seed bank, probably a big collection that it has to raise money to try to protect and then send those seeds back out into the world. The model for the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance was to educate and inspire people all over one region so that they could grow and save their own seeds, and then network them together so that they could share seeds and stories, successes and failures. And so in the short 5 years that we've been in existence. We have about 4,000 people now on our email list. We have trained more than 1,000 people in our seed schools of various kinds, Seed School Online being one of them.
Yep.
We did 4 trainings now, and have over 100 seed teachers trained. And these are people to go out and teach their own seed schools. So now we're starting to grow exponentially. We've got 82 seed libraries signed up on our directories. And you can go on our website, anybody can, and kind of hook into this network. So the idea behind the Mountain West Seed Summit is that every other year, open the doors and let's bring everybody together. That what it's going to take as we go into the future to save these sorts of resources are real human relationships. We got to know each other. I mean, it's one thing to be on a directory and email back and forth, even exchange seeds. And there's some great stories of long-term, lifelong relationships being created that way. But there's nothing like getting together with the people that you've been dealing with. And so that's probably the core of the emotional energy anyway that happens at the Mountain West Seed Summit.
It felt like one big seed school.
Yeah. Well,
if we had asked people like how many people have been to seed school, I swear half the people have been to seed school or been influenced by other people who have participated or who are in our circle, like our wonderful board member Don Tipping from Siskiyou Seeds, who has the Seed Academy, and Rowan White, who we have taught with and who has Seed Seva online course and on the ground from Sierra Seeds, and then another wonderful young human, Casey O'Leary, who's one of our board members, and she has the Snake River Seed Co-op, and she does a lot of training. So the trainings are happening, and that was actually one of the topics that we covered. But I want to just go back to the spirituality piece, unless I interrupted you, Bill, and you want to finish that thought. So I just want to say, and I hope that I can articulate this well enough or express it in terms of how I'm feeling, because I can feel the emotion come up. And Greg, you know me, I'm not like a hugely emotional human. I'm mostly kind of, the alpha female person that runs a lot on adrenaline, type A personality. Mm-hmm. Yep. But I do get emotional. And it made me realize that I know the work's important. I know that we need to help other communities, especially in the Mountain West, get reconnected to their own seed sovereignty, that there's so many things that help us by doing that in terms of our food and our culture and our community. I know all of that is important, but it re-grounded me in the notion that this is really spiritual work. This is the basis of who we are as human beings. And the magic in that little seed and the relationships that we have with those seeds and with each other is what it's about. That's the essence. And you can't put that into an equation. You can't dissect it. You can't pull out its DNA. And certainly you can chart the genome sequence. But the essence, again, is really the genesis of who we are as human beings. Yeah. In our seeds.
Well, obviously we depend on seeds for our food. And so in a sense, it's a fundamental value to us. But we heard expressions over and over, especially being in the Southwest, of not only does it provide sustenance, but it provides identity. It's who many of the Pueblo peoples, that's how they know who they are. They take care of their corn and their seeds. And so, in that sense, it's really was a really wonderful expression of what Bill's talking about, I think.
Yeah. So in terms of moving forward, we had this incredible array of diversity. So the people who joined us were as diverse as the seeds themselves. And initially, when we did the first Seed Summit 2 years ago, I thought that we would primarily stick to the Mountain West because that's the organization, the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance. But the way things have been evolving, we had an opportunity to have a couple of gentlemen from Zimbabwe join us. That actually came through a rather surreptitious grant. I won't get into the details of that. Oh. Another piece of serendipity that dropped out of the sky and made it possible to bring Dr. Joseph Mushita Dr. Joseph Mushanga and Andrew Mushita from the Community Development Technology Organization in Zimbabwe they were able to join us. And these guys are seed breeders and educators on the ground working with farmers, 65-person organization. They're changing seed laws in Africa. I mean, it's, that kind of participation is oftentimes very difficult to have in any conference, especially one on seeds. And then we had somebody from India, Indra Singh, joined us, who's done a lot of on-the-ground work in India. India is changing seed laws like crazy. You've heard Bill talk about the Politi Seed Festival in Greece. It's like the largest gathering of seed people and seeds on the planet with no physical, brick and mortar facility, where they have more. I love what Bill said. What do you say, that they have more seeds in their, quote, seed bank, which is a virtual seed bank?
Well, it's a festival, and people come from all over Europe once a year, and they bring the seeds they've been saving and growing. And at the festival for 3 days, which is music and food, there's some backline database work being done to make sure that everything's being taken care of. And the things that need to be grown out for the next year then are sent back out to all the people's homes. And so they're now taking care of more seeds than the Greek National Seed Bank. And they really don't even have a budget except for the festival. And that's the model we're trying to adopt here, because I really don't think anybody's coming to save us.
So we had Panayoti is the gentleman's name who started
he's the founder
festival. And so when they had their festival this past, I guess it was April or so, our co-founder and board member John Kasha went over to participate in that seed festival, and there was a big love fest, and then we invited Panayoti, who came with his son and a friend. And it just broadened. I think what we've come to understand, and Bill and I experienced this when we went to the Philippines a couple of years ago to teach with our friend Sherry Manning at Global Seed Savers, the organic farmers in the Philippines, that everybody is dealing with the same circumstance all over the world.
What's that?
Well, their seeds are being threatened?
Yes. Yeah. Their seeds are being co-opted. Their seeds are being threatened. Patented, the, intellectual property rights, which, now feels like such a foreign term to me when speaking of seeds. It's happening all over. 63% of the seeds are owned by, a handful of companies. And now several of those companies, or at least one of those companies has merged. Bayer now owns Monsanto. So, it's getting even more co-opted and more monopolized as we go on. And so what do we do as backyard gardeners and people who have CSAs, community supported agriculture projects, and seed libraries and small farms? And, what do we do to protect our rights? And so coming together to discuss this was groundbreaking and unusual, because we did have all these different aspects. You can't find like a seed gathering, I don't think, that would have. And of course, the indigenous community. We had more indigenous people than we did certainly the first time, and we tried to really create a circumstance where there was space at the table, that we could learn from each other. And even that was eye-opening and heartfelt and challenging as a conference producer. Very, very challenging, because there's different cultures. We're talking about a bunch of white people here that are very linear, and the Native community doesn't work that way. So we learned a lot in that circumstance, and that from that perspective.
Yeah, it was good. I think that for me, it was the diversity of people that came together, and because they came from such far and wide, it just reinforced this idea that sort of the citizen science, grassroots, use new, networking software that's available to us, allows, organizations like ours now for the first time to really be effective and to start to emerge. And I got the feeling over and over that the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance is emerging as a model, that we've taken these tools.
Nice.
We've taken these tools, and, it's off-the-shelf software that runs our website that allows the directories to come up that anybody can tap into and then communicate with anyone else on the network without us even knowing what's going on. I mean, that software was created for the Howard Dean campaign, and it's open source. And so, I think that's just a sign of these modern times. And we've just done it pretty well, I guess.
Yeah.
I think for me, this summit was an affirmation of that. When so many people came from so far, so many important people that have been involved in the seed world. One of the surprises, and we just found out the day before the conference started, was Dr. Bill Tracy from the University of Wisconsin signed up and came to the conference. He's probably the foremost representative of public plant breeding in the United States. That almost all the land-grant colleges and almost all the research being done in universities in this country, I think this funding is 70-1 biotech versus any other kind of plant breeding, and that any other kind we call public plant breeding.
Wow.
We call it that because it uses more traditional techniques, and most importantly, when something is discovered or perfected in a public plant breeding program, it becomes part of the public again.
Yeah.
It's given away. And this is how our whole farm system operated up until relatively recently. And then it's shifted, completely to a state where everything that's released by the universities is patented now. Sometimes by the university, sometimes in cooperation with the companies that paid for the research to have new varieties developed. In that whole thing that we hope is starting to change back. Bill Tracy, Dr. Tracy has emerged as one of those people. In fact, I think he got the first Cliff Foundation $1 million endowed chair for public plant breeding.
You're talking about Seed Matters?
Right. Well, it was the Cliff Foundation that did it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a real honor to have him show up. Here we are, a grassroots group of people that have self-organized, trying to save our own seeds, and here comes the professor.
Yeah.
And we should thank our board member Don Tipping for there's another conference called Organicology, and also what is the Organic Seed Alliance called their biannual event? It's just
Organic Seed Growers.
Yeah,
Conference.
The Organic Seed Growers Conference. Well, they have theirs every other year, and we're trying to stagger so we don't have them at the same time. But Organic Seed Alliance, if you want the science and the selection and the breeding and the strategies and the university work, Organic Seed Alliance is where it's at. And they've got these two events that they rotate every other year. And one is Organicology. And so I guess Dr. Tracy was there and was recruited by Don Tipping, our dear friend from Siskiyou Seeds, who's on our board. But that's how this happened. It was just like leapfrogging with people from other places that, added on and came from here and came from there. In fact, this was easy, but Rebecca Newbern came. And of course, anybody who's involved with seed libraries probably knows that name because Rebecca's she's known as the seed library mama. I don't know what she's known as. I think maybe she likes to be known as the preparedness person. She has a whole track on being, on preparing for different things, disaster, climate change, earthquakes, and you can actually find her online. But she came, and how exciting to know that we now have like 647 seed libraries around the world, and that many of those have used Richmond Grows Seeds.org, which is the Richmond Grows Seed Lending Library, is the model where Rebecca has all the instructions, all the information if you want to start a seed library. So she was with us for about 3 different. It's the RichmondGrowsSeeds.org.
That was the first website that really mentioned. She was the second seed library to move into a library in her town in Richmond, California.
2010, I think.
Right, way back. And she's a middle school science teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of just starting a seed library at her local library, she wrote it all down and kept track of everything that it took to start the library, and then put that all online. And so it was how to start a seed library button on the Richmond Grows Seeds.org website that spawned the revolution, so to speak. It's hard to find a seed library that got started that didn't use at least some of those resources. I got to introduce Rebecca in her workshop on how to start a seed library at the conference, and I was trying to think about what to say, and I said, this is like having a workshop on how to start your own automobile company. And today we have a special guest, Henry Ford, I mean, you know, she's the one. And so it was really special to have that there. And that kind of depth went throughout so many of the workshops that we had. We were so honored to have some of the original people and some of the best people in their field come in and give their workshops.
We had the board chair from the Organic Seed Alliance, Sebastian Aguilera, presented. Philip Kauth, who is with Seed Savers Exchange.
He's head of their conservation
department. He joined us. And then we had just incredible local people, many of whom are involved in the different pueblos and different indigenous communities there, who joined us as well. Rowan White, you know, with the Mohawk. She's part of the, I believe, is she chair of the Indigenous Seed Network?
She is the chairman of the board of Seed Savers Exchange.
She's chairman of the board of Seed Savers, but she's a co-founder of this Indigenous Seed Keepers Network. So we were kept on our toes constantly in terms of just the equanimity that we were attempting to share together around seeds and seed origins and seed stories and seed as it relates to culture. We had a lot of folks who just shared stories and experiences. It was just profound.
Well.
Oh, I just saw Bill. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I got excited. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to ask you, and maybe this is what you're excited about. What was your favorite workshop? Tell us which one you went to that had stories that kept you, you know?
Well, you have to understand I was co-producing the event.
Well, I know.
Do you understand that?
I understand it totally.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Bill and I are co-founders along with John Kasha and co-directors of the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance. So when I'm just sort of poking him a little bit, because we both ran around a lot. There was a lot of introduction, a lot of damage control, things like that. I enjoyed Radical Seed Projects with RIMSA, with Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance seed teachers, because I had fabulous people on the panel, including Diane Pratt and Rich Murphy and Lexi Fickenshire from the Denver Montessori School, who's got a whole farm program there, which includes seeds with the children. And I think a CSA. Rich Murphy is from Veterans to Farmers, you know.
Fort Collins, Colorado.
Fort Collins. And what is his slogan? Oh, gosh. From
protectors to producers.
From protectors to, and yes. And Diane Pratt, who is with the Master Gardeners, Santa Fe Master Gardeners, and they are now putting on seed schools.
Annually. Yeah,
without, just by themselves. We had Bill zoom in during their first effort in November. But interestingly, Diane Pratt is kind of the point person for that and the main teacher. She came to teacher training, and she presented at Radical Seed Projects, and she talked about from the ground up how to put together a program, which was absolutely perfect because we worked with them, with the Master Gardeners there. We just got a grant from Lush Cosmetics for something that we're calling Expanding Seed Saving Exponentially, which is to assist other teachers in the community to do exactly what Diane did. And she handed over the PowerPoint with all the steps. It's like, wow. Thank you, Diane.
Well, so if you're listening and you want a seed school in your area, this is now beginning to offer a whole new set of options. We occasionally do our seed school teacher training. You can come and be trained as a teacher yourself, so you can go home like Diane and start teaching your own seed schools. And we have a list now, I think, on our seed teacher directory on our website. I think there's 52 seed teachers have signed up, and these are people that are willing to help you, either come and help you teach or share their resources so that you can get up and running in your community and start teaching about this important subject.
So some of the things we'll be making available to seed teachers, certainly it would be helpful if people attended seed school teacher training or they got trained through any of the other different, opportunities out there, including Dawn and Seed Academy, Seed Seva.
Well, the more you can learn, the better.
Yeah. So that's a way to lay a base. And then we'll help with just formatting, PowerPoints as necessary, budgets, registration portals, promotional materials, and just kind of guide the process. That's what the grant was for. But I did want to mention that one other thing, which you didn't know, Bill. We had 5 minutes So I shared another radical seed project called the Great American Seed Up. And I showed one of our videos and didn't have a lot of time to go into it, but just quickly explain that it's this gathering that we do every year in Phoenix in September with 70 plus varieties and big popcorn buckets, and people come in and scoop up seeds, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in the months ahead. The Great American Seed Up.
So I think we should talk about the titles of some of the workshops because we had a number of them filmed. And it's possible, it's in the works and being discussed now, that we will have a YouTube channel available so if you're listening tonight, this isn't just a one-off. We're discussing things that you may get in the near future access to. And thank you to all this incredible technology.
And the people that provided it for us. We had, this is the first time that we've actually been in a position where we had a photographer, Sharon, and Tatiana, and Javier, who did the videoing. So we've got it all. So we're going to work on that and see where that takes us to make it available. You want to talk about some of the workshops and
well, I was just going to say my favorite workshop was one called Young Seed Stewards Rising. And it was interesting to me because they were all young Native Americans. And they had dedicated themselves to either nonprofit projects that they were growing seeds for, or even seed companies, small, new seed operations. And the panel, Emily Erasmus, who's one of our emerging bright lights, I would say, in the national seed movement, as she starts to dedicate herself more and more to that kind of work. She's spent the last year or so at the Tesuque Pueblo doing germination tests and helping to get the seed bank there. With the Migdio Bayan. Mm-hmm. And so, but Tiana Baca was there. She's from Albuquerque, teaches in a school in Albuquerque and manages a farm and garden program, an educational program. Chris Barney, incredible Dine or Navajo young man who has his own little seed company. Danye Gonzalez was there. She was incredible also in that a story of just really finding out who she was in the world in her 20s through seeds, and now dedicating her life to making sure that they're available and part of her life. And so it just gave me great hope.
And Raina.
Yeah, and Raina?
I don't know anything about Raina.
Well, they were all spectacular. And again, it just gave me great hope that young people, it's so easy to get lost in this technological world, but these people have all transcended that, found their identity in seeds, and are marching forward. And they're going to be way better than we are by the time they get to be our age. I mean, it's humbling. It's just humbling to see that kind of energy. So that was really one of my favorite ones. Do you have another one, Belle? Did you make it to the...
Well, I enjoyed, Charles Eisenstein he's got a new book out on climate change and Climate, A New Story. And so, Greg, I mean, it's funny because we've been kind of messing around in the permaculture world for the last 20 plus years, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Permaculture being a way of looking at things in terms of integrating systems. It's a design system, and it helps us. Nothing goes to waste, and it serves everything else. And so, the native people we're talking permaculture, and the indigenous folks there are going, yeah, and your point, the indigenous ways. I mean, this is who we are as human beings. And so, sometimes I think we can be pretty arrogant. So anyway, Charles he just wrote a book. It's called Climate, A New Story. And he is one of our great thinkers out there, along the lines of Paul Hawken. Paul Hawken, the Ecology of Commerce, and from the original Smith and Hawken. But Charles basically has said some things that we have all heard time and time again, and it was really the way in which systems affect other systems so intricately, and that you can't just eradicate the mosquito and think that you have saved humanity because there's no more malaria, because of the way that web, that deep, deep web. And so Charles kind of unpacked that for us again on Friday and brought up a lot of emotion. I think some people felt like, well, we've heard that before. Others felt I haven't heard it quite so beautifully posited. And a lot of emotions were flying around, and it just became apparent that he kind of set the tone for the whole weekend. And the conversations continued around this place of awareness and now what? You know, don't tell us about 94% of the diversity is disappearing and the oceans are rising, and give us, you know, what's next. And basically what he said is you can't approach this from a reductionist perspective. You can't just say, if we just deal with the carbon, we'll be fine. I think that pissed some people off because we're all working really hard to try to do what we can. And basically he's saying, and I hope I'm not misquoting him, or Charles, if you're listening tonight, please send in a little a little correction or something. But basically that we really have a responsibility to live in relationship and to do what we can to honor that relationship and be cognizant of what we are doing on the planet. And it all helps, but to get into that kind of linear mechanistic thinking that if we just, you know, don't use straws, for example. I'm picking on Greg because he's changed straws throughout Phoenix, Arizona. Nobody uses straws.
God, for decades.
Yeah. Right, and we all do what we can, but he really stirred things up. But I did love his presentation. Andrew Kimbrell from the Center for Food Safety basically did the same presentation as Charles, but spun it a little bit differently.
Well, yeah, around lawsuits.
Yeah, around lawsuits and love. It's like with this attorney that's connected to New Cosmology and Father Thomas Berry and Wendell Berry, the great farmer and author and inspiring human. I mean, the mix of people that came and presented were profound and did stir up a lot. See, Bill's got the schedule up. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say something about Charles Eisenstein. What I got was that we need a new story. You know, sort of the dominant white capitalistic culture on the North American continent especially needs to change its story about how it fits in to the rest of the planet. And he's just making a serious attempt at trying to write a new story. And he doesn't claim that it is the story, but we just need a new way of understanding how we're approaching things. And the example he gave was about the environment was that if you think that we're going to, all we have to do now is get CO2 out of the atmosphere, because of global climate change, then you've missed all the other relationships and things that are going on that caused that to happen in the first place, that are doing their own destruction and causing so much diversity to be lost. And so it was just a reminder for me that everything's related and that we are an essential part of that relationship, and how we think about each other in the world, it may be the most important part of that, at least right now. And so that was really, really good.
So Charles has a series of podcasts, and Greg, you do too, and we would highly recommend that you interview him. He interviewed Brock Dolman recently from the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center, who's
nice.
one of the cool people out there doing permaculture work for decades, and I think he's the co-founder of the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. So I highly recommend that you listen to that podcast, because it's basically what we're trying to express.
Which podcast?
It's just Charles Eisenstein with Brock Dolman. It's a couple of weeks old.
What's the name of the podcast?
You guys can
just look up Charles Eisenstein. I don't know.
Yeah, it's EISENSTEIN, Charles Eisenstein. And you guys should interview each other.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be fun.
That'd be fun. So, we did a lot of other things too. We had a lot of hands-on stuff. We certainly mixed in our heritage grain programs and had people demonstrating various aspects of grain cleaning and milling. Our dear friends up in Flagstaff, Jackie and Steve Alston, brought all their toys and did some threshing. And although, again, we had a we had a wonderful storm on Friday night, so it made it challenging to do outside things. But we've got folks in northern New Mexico now who are participating in the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance grain trials at Los Luceros historic property. And
cool.
So there are many things happening, of course, all over in terms of bakeries and breweries that are experimenting with local grains, trying to get that footprint a little smaller and going back to the ancient grains.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we do want to mention, before we get off today, I want to mention Grain School, because we have a 3-day Grain School coming up in April in Cottonwood. in the Verde Valley by
How do people find out about that?
They can go online, RockyMountainSeeds.org. 3 days. It's April 12th, 13th, 14th. Our friend Dr. Gary Nabin, will be joining us for a couple of days, and Don Guerra from Barrio Bread in Tucson, who does awesome sourdough bread. And then since we were so completely overwhelmed with the Seed Summit, we're now starting to get back on the horse and organize that event, taking place at the Eco Learning Center in Cottonwood.
Sounds like people need to come just for the food.
Well, and we've got grains planted in the fields we did last fall. So this will be a real hands-on. You'll get to see the grains growing. There's a commercial kitchen there and then a wonderful classroom. When we're already starting to invite some of our favorite teachers that have come to our other grain schools. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to get Greg Shane, who's the steward for Glass Gem Corn.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
I talked to Greg about coming over, so it's going to be a good program.
Nice. So there's a couple of questions here. If you have, on the live event, if you have questions, just put them in on the right of your screen there. I want to get to these couple of questions, and I want to ask you about Rocky Mountain Seed events that are coming up. So Michael from Mesa says, does vacuum sealing have any effect on seeds when saving them?
Yeah, it kills them.
That was simple. A simple answer.
Seeds are living, breathing embryos. They need to breathe. I mean, seeds have been stored a long time in sealed cans, and that's, the industry recognizes that. You don't even have to germ test seeds as often if you put them in a sealed can, but they don't suck the air out. The air is necessary. What little air is in there is absolutely necessary. Yeah. What you don't want in there is moisture in the air. And I think that's behind some of the vacuum packing for food, as you get the moisture out as well as the air. And so that's why that's so popular. But seeds need the air. Just don't seal up your jar or your can or your bag on a rainy day in Phoenix. Wait for one of those beautiful days when it's only 6 or 8% humidity, and you'll have no trouble whatsoever.
Yeah, seal them, put them in jars, stick them in the freezers. Why don't you say a little bit about that too, Bill? Storing it in the freezers.
Freezer's a great place, but again, you want to seal it on a dry day. Mm-hmm. Just put the lid on or whatever. And once you put it in the freezer, make sure it's in glass or in some sort of container that's impermeable to moisture. And we know that even, freezer bags, Ziploc freezer bags allow moisture. I mean, after a few years, if something gets lost in your freezer, you go in and you can just see all the frost inside. Yep. And so you don't want that to happen. So glass jars, they do make plastic. We're getting, I think, Greg, you're getting some paper foil poly packets.
We're looking for some still. Yeah, we're looking for some still.
And so those are the kinds of things you would use. And then once they're in the freezer and you're taking them out, make sure that they warm up to room temperatures before you open them. Because otherwise, the air that's in your room will go inside the jar, say, and because it's super cold, it will condense any moisture that's in there on the inside of the jar, and therefore, all of a sudden, then the inside of your jar is wet, and that's not good for your seeds. So that's just one of the things you have to understand. It slows down the process a bit when you get them out, but it's still well worth it.
Perfect. And Robin says, what is Charles' full name and the name of his book again, please? Was that the Charles that you, Eisenstein, that you mentioned a moment ago?
Yes. It's
his new book. He also has one on sacred economics.
And he also has one, which I love, is A More Beautiful World Our Heart Knows Is Possible.
Cool.
So, I just wanted to read, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to spell his name for her again. It's what they asked for. So Charles, and it's Eisenstein, 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 spelled just like it sounds.
Perfect.
Any other questions, Greg, that are coming in?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment.
Okay,
so you were going to read something real quick, and then I want to wrap up.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, I just wanted to mention the keynote that Rowan provided us. It's called Healing Homecomings, Indigenous Seed Rematriation. Not repatriation, but rematriation. And the description, and Rowan's presentation is probably one of the first ones that we will get ready send out on YouTube, because we videoed it, and I'm really hoping it came out well. Anyway, it says, it's Rowan White, And the description is, a seed matriation movement is underway with indigenous people, carrying their ancestral seeds from seed vaults, institutions, and universities back to the lands of their birth. Rowan will share with us hopeful stories from this intergenerational movement and how it is empowering cross-cultural reconciliation work that is restoring food sovereignty and seed sovereignty within Native communities.
Well, that just about sums it up.
That's pretty deep. That's pretty, I mean, that's
yeah,
good. I mean, and it's necessary and important, and it's part of our story as well.
What are you doing today, Greg, that'll have any effect in 1,000 years?
Bill McDorman says significance, but what are you doing today that has any significance in 1,000 years? Well, Rowan's got it covered.
Yeah.
Perfect. So programs that people can take, we talked about Grain School, Seed School Online. You can find that at seedschoolonline.com. What else you got coming up?
We have another, we're going to do a grain school, a 2-day grain school with the museum, the Albuquerque Museum in July. That'll be a 2-day.
That's July 26th and 27th.
And we'll be doing that with our friends at Los Luceros Historic Property, the grain trial folks there, with Seed Broadcast as well. Seed Broadcast, Seed Broadcast wasn't at your seed school, Greg, but they record stories, and they have a magazine called Agriculture, with an emphasis on culture. Oh. And then the Garden's Edge also is at the bottom. The Garden's Edge. And then we have our grain trials program that we're getting ready to kick off again, where we've sourced how many grains?
We have 285 grains
that are available.
And we have over 100 people now that have signed up to help us grow them out, see if they work where you live. And if they work, let us know and return twice as much seed as we sent you in the first place, with any information that you've gathered about how well they do. And what we're trying to do is find the grains that used to grow here and some new ones from around the world. We've got purple Tibetan barley, some really incredible exotic stuff, and they're so beautiful. I mean, even if you just use them for cut flower arrangements, I mean, it would just be a stunning addition.
We have our Seed Stewards program, where we ask people to just take responsibility for one seed and grow it out. It's a little form. And again, we try to help with resources, technical resources and support, and a network, and just trying to bring back the diversity in communities, and for the communities to identify those interesting and rare things that they can find and uncover. We're also, I know Bill earlier said that we're not doing seed banking and things like that, but we are trying to inspire others to start small community seed banks. And we do have, a little bit of support and networking. We don't have a seed bank directory at this point. That's still up and coming. But, we will do some seed school, either a seed school or a grain school or a teacher training this year. We actually have another proposal into the USDA's SARE program, Sustainable Agriculture Research Education is the acronym, and they funded a seed school teacher training for agricultural professionals in October, and we presented them with the option of perhaps funding a grain school teacher training for agricultural professionals, so people could, in their community farmers market, people or extension agents could start working in their communities to build up the grain resource. And so we're waiting to hear back on that, and depending on what happens with that, we'll determine whether we do that program or a seed school or a seed school teacher training. So never at a loss for things to do.
And, Greg.
Oh, that's right.
One of the exciting things that happen, I want everybody that's listening that's either growing some seeds on their own and replanting them in their own yard, no matter how small it is, wherever you are one of the most important people in the world. And the fact that we've come together with this software and networked ourselves, and now we get together every other year, is starting to be recognized as something really important. And I think because of that, we've been invited to present at the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture meeting that will take place in Rome with the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. And they're looking for a United States representative of this grassroots movement that is taking place all over the planet. And they don't usually associate that with the United States. The representatives that have been part of this organization up to this point have more represented, I think, industrial agriculture on some scale or another. And so I think our day is coming. The summit that we did was exciting for those of us that got to go. We will put workshops up. Yeah, we're going to put workshops up as we can. We don't, we're 4 part-time people in the organization. So as we can get things going, if you want to help us and make a donation and help us grow this network, we use most of our resources to run our seed schools and grow the network and to keep our networking software running so that people can find each other. That's really what we're here to do. So.
And the next seed summit?
Well, in 2 years, we started talking about the next one we're hoping will be in Buell, Idaho, on a 22-acre hot springs property. And so it's going to be a seed and soak.
I can't keep us out of those hot springs.
So that's why it's a permaculture project, Greg, that's starting to evolve. And so we don't know if it'll be ready for us yet, but we're going to be starting to grow grains and other things there this year. So it's really exciting.
Self-organizing, so we can go have fun.
Beautiful.
We didn't have fun. We had big fun, but boy, what a
cool.
It'll take a while to get over this one.
For more information, you can go to
RockyMountainSeeds.org.
RockyMountainSeeds.org. Thank you, Bill and Belle, for another great, awesome seed chat. We do this once a month, and then we package them up and slide them into our podcast at urbanfarmpodcast.com. So thank you both for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, and as I always like to say, I'll catch you on the flip side. Farm out.